Hey there, I'm Caitlin, the founder of the Legacy Brand Leader Curriculum, and I'm so excited to show you my newest presentation, How to Build a Legacy Brand. So this is brought to you by the Legacy Brand Leader Curriculum. Thank you for being here. When you think legacy, and when you see these pyramids, just kind of take a note about what comes to mind. And actually take notes, actually take notes. Don't take a mental note, actually take notes. All right, and I'll leave you with those thoughts for now. Let's continue. All right, so let's start off with how do I know what I'm about to share? Wheeler Clinic is one of the brands I had worked for. You'll see many more brands pop up, but essentially I know what I'm about to share because I worked with many different businesses of different sizes in different forms of businesses. So small businesses, large corporations, online businesses, businesses that are only in existence because they make money on content. And because I asked the right questions whenever I served in these organizations, I always understood how the businesses operated. And often my roles were in some form of management. So, for example, with the Wheeler Clinic one, I was an interim office manager. The next one here, I can't move it. It's Parexel Biotech. That's a huge biopharmaceutical contract research organization. And I learned how to really see the operation from the inside that they had with branding and marketing. Women's Health USA, I asked the right questions and I was able to see the operations of how the whole medical system worked. So these are all brands you'll see that I've worked for, okay? If you can start looking at the bigger picture and asking questions like, oh, why do we do this? Identify where you're at in the grand scheme of things. You know what I mean? Like a bird's eye view. Where are you at in the whole chain of operations? What comes before and after you? Do you understand how the business is set up, the organization of it? And if you can identify that with your mind, you can identify that in any single business just by understanding the framework of where you're at. Take the piece of your puzzle and kind of build what's going on around you. So if you take that mindset as like an engineer and something you're building and look at business that way, that's exactly what we're going to look at for legacy brands. This is what you're going to get out of it. The first thing is resilience. If you feel like giving up, if you feel confused, if you feel like something always comes in to interrupt your flow or interrupt your motivation, it's because you lack resilience. So resilience is having the grit and the determination that like nothing can stop you and you are set. It's going to happen come hell or high water. And so that's absolutely what you'll get. Leadership is another byproduct of what we're going to learn. If you can really understand what I'm teaching you and really take action after this presentation, you're going to become a leader and step out of that consumer role. You're going to have engaged audiences because legacy brand building comes with lots of connection, lots of focus on the people in front of you, and commitment to serving something bigger than you, which will naturally draw in people who are devoted to what you're serving because they know that they're a part of it too. And that will also draw in loyal buyers. Committed partners, employees. This is super important because we cannot grow a legacy brand without people who are committed more to the mission than they are money. If we can get this on the onset of our business, we're in the clear because they're going to draw in more people who are again committed to the mission and the legacy over short-term incentives. It's going to give you security because anything that is long-term is more secure, it's safer, it's more protected, and it's going to give you freedom. As a result of the security, you're going to get more time, you're going to get more money, and it's going to be better for your family in the end because you're going to have an asset that is worth a lot more money as it grows. It's going to get a lot more interest from investors. It's going to get a lot more interest from other businesses. And you're creating something that can be passed down through generations. So this is essentially what the 1% knows, right? The 1% does this all the time. Oh, that's right. One of the most important things is that if we continue developing a legacy brand, we're going to see the change in the world that we want to see. As Gandhi said, be the change in the world you want to see. I truly live by that. And again, if 1% of the population is doing this with huge businesses, if we can really create legacies that are devoted to service and the humanities, we're going to see a huge change, even if disaster strikes, even if the economy collapses, because we're going to create a world where we're taking care of each other and prioritizing mission over money. So let's first start with what a brand legacy is not. Okay, it is not being popular. It is not going viral. That is not a brand legacy. Viral and popularity is usually just being a puppet in someone else's big picture, right? So for example, if you have a YouTube video and it goes viral, well, you're helping their platform. You're helping YouTube's platform. You're building their business. And you may get views that may draw more leads to your funnel. But at the end of the day, YouTube still owns that data. YouTube still owns those views, and you're making YouTube rich. And while you may see byproducts of that, it's only temporary because it's a result of a trend or effect. Music, for example, in this picture, it's trends, it's fads, it fades very fast, and that is not a legacy. It's not money either. Yes, again, money is a byproduct of legacy building. However, it is not the money itself. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that legacy is not wealth. I know there's financial consultants and CPAs who would disagree with that, but we're not talking about that kind of legacy here. We're talking about a brand legacy, remember. So the most vital thing is the asset of the brand. The brand is the asset. The finances, the money is a byproduct of that asset, okay? So the asset is the legacy in this case, which is the brand. So let's go back to those notes that you took. What came to mind? Just spit it out. What feelings, what thoughts? Well, so for me, I get history. I get teamwork. It is unified vision. Was commanded by someone to be built. That's really important to keep in mind here, is that this was a directed, intentional, deliberate landmark that was created. It was prepared for. It was anticipated. And the mark it was to leave on the world was known way beforehand, right? And look, another wonder of the world, the Colosseum. It was directed by a leader, right? It was built for an emperor, and it served the people, right? It entertained them. It brought in money, probably. And it is still here today. It's still not in operation, but it's still bringing in money for the community. It's still teaching the world about history. So again, it's historic. It's a landmark. It's a precedent for others to follow or not follow, right? To learn lessons from. And so that's the beautiful thing about a legacy, is it guides the future. So this guides people. And the last one is the Taj Mahal. According to a historian from Boston University, this was built in honor of a princess. The sad thing is, the leader at the time died as a prisoner in his own palace. And this is very interesting to me, because how many of us build our own businesses where we become prisoners in them because we're doing everything by ourselves, we're not hiring help, we continue struggling and serving, and we stay in service mode so much, and we never really step up to become that leader of a team. Or maybe we get vendors and we get salespeople, whatever, but we're still not leading them, right? They're still doing their own thing, and they're so disconnected from us that we don't really know what's going on. We don't know how they're getting success. We just trust them and say, okay, yeah, you do what you do. You're experts at that, and brush them away. And that's not leadership. None of these landmarks were built that way. No, the directors knew what was going on. They knew the money that was being spent. They knew the labor that was going on. This Taj Mahal talks about how they had planned it so meticulously. They hired architects. It was millions of dollars, and it took decades to build. It took decades for the artists to come in and adorn the Taj Mahal with stones. And so it was created layer by layer. And I imagine all of these were. So That's the difference between a legacy brand and just a regular brand. It's going to take decades to build. And that doesn't mean you have to wait till the end to get money. It just means it's a living landmark. It's going to grow with time. It's going to evolve. And because of that, it becomes more valuable. And look how valuable these are now, right? They're historical. They're world renowned. They're ancient. And I mean, they're desolate now, but people still travel the world to see them. There's still demand for them, right? And so they're not actually dead. And that's what a legacy brand will do. It will never die. And the difference between a landmark and a brand is that a brand can continually be passed down to someone to maintain the mission it started with, to carry on in integrity what it was started with. And if there is not a brand legacy, if there is not that direction from the original leader, and if it is not willed that way, someone can take it over, and the original owner will get a lot of money, and that's that. And that's where a lot of people stop. And again, so just because something takes decades and it's big and it sells for a lot of money does not make it a legacy brand. The intention of a legacy brand is for the original mission to carry on for generations. All right, so let's get more into the short-term game versus the long-term game. Short-term games commoditize, meaning if you're a commodity, for example, if you're a commodity, you're in high demand because it's a basic need. It's a survival thing. It means there's many other things in the market like you. You mainly are bought because you're the cheapest, you're affordable, and so you're a commodity. Your rice, your beans, your cereal. People need you, they like you, but they don't necessarily choose you because you are the best option or because you're special. It's just something that is available right now at a good price, so they buy you. You're on the shelf, you're in demand because there's a market for it, meaning it's not because you created the market for it. Someone else determined the market for it, and you're just coming in and saying, oh, I'm an option. So if you're just another option, you're not doing what the long-term game does, which is differentiating. So differentiating means that you are an alternative. So option is apples and apples, right? You got Macintosh apples, you got Gala apples, all these different kinds of flavored apples. Differentiating is apples and oranges, okay? It's another alternative to an apple. Okay, so the short-term game resolves a temporary problem. Long-term game resolves a timeless problem. So a temporary problem is something that is a result of a trend, fad, a market decision that's determined by politics or an external factor outside of the business. Or cell phone cases are a perfect example. You have models of cell phones that are updated intermittently throughout the years. So, of course, new companies pop up all the time saying, oh, we have the best phone case. Oh, we have a lifetime warranty. We have a hard case. So they're solving a temporary problem. The best way to protect a certain type of model phone, right? So it's a chain reaction. Long-term brands resolve a timeless problem. A lot of times the timeless problem exists because people are people. And when a problem exists simply because someone is alive, not because of any social construct around them or creating the problem, imposing the problem, that's a timeless. So, for example, therapists, nutritionists, anyone who's at service of a particular human problem is a very good example of a timeless problem. Okay, short-term focuses on a preoccupied mindset. Long-term has a focused mindset. Preoccupied means simply that you are infatuated with obtaining a particular result. And so you're locked into a very narrow scope of how you see business. You're going to focus on just that one way, learning a very particular skill and staying in that. A focused mindset is focused not on the result, but on learning different ways to achieve a variety of results. Because once we know what different types of results we can get from different methods, we begin understanding how to focus our view on the results that are the best results. So focused means open, and it means you're committed to the process, you're committed to learning. Preoccupied means you're committed to the short-term game is all about following. So again, we talked about, because it resolves a temporary problem, it's a chain reaction. So of course they're going to follow events. They're going to follow social constructs. They're following other brands and just creating options, not an alternative. As a brand that is a differentiator, that is an alternative and not just an option, it leads and it sets the precedent. Short-term gain possesses money, meaning you want to acquire money. You want to have money. Long-term gain uses money. It's a tool. You know how to direct it. You know how you're going to make money from it. And it uses this scope and the focus of the big picture. That's its focus. The big picture guides its smaller actions. So it's not about the how that is important. It's not about knowing the how. It's knowing the what. What is the intention? What is the goal? And then the how will come in later. Short-term prioritizes guarantees. Again, this comes with the preoccupied mindset. And so they're really focused on the how, the micro. So they focus on one way of doing something, that's it, and then get what they want and leave. Long-term focuses on prioritizing possibilities. So possibilities mean more options, more ways of doing things, more versions of success. And once they find the version of success that they like, they repeat that. Short-term capitalizes on what is in now, a trend, again, that comes with the commodity, right? And long-term focuses on capitalizing on vision and mission. And finally, short-term focuses on reacting, and the long-term anticipates. So remember, this is a chain reaction. It follows. It's trendy. It's a narrow scope, and long-term anticipates, prepares, thinks ahead, and it's guiding what will happen by creating anticipation for options. So it's creating those options. It's not being controlled by a market. It's not being controlled by a social construct. It's not being controlled by money. The vision and mission are guiding the anticipation of what will happen, and the legacy brand leader actually determines what will happen as a result of the planning. This is what the long-term vision does, right? We just learned these in the last slide. So let's go into these a little bit deeper. Differentiate. Well, how does one differentiate? Remember we talked about apples and oranges? Well, the mission is the main focus. The mission is simply something that serves a big purpose bigger than the business, okay? That's the differentiation. Well, how does a legacy brand capitalize on vision and mission? It protects vision and mission above all. How does a legacy brand resolve a timeless problem? It again focuses on the principle it focuses on a principle-based solution and a people-focused solution. Principle means a foundation. It means an unchanging fact. And so because it is timeless, it always exists, and they're creating their business on this. They're creating their every move on principles, on facts, and they focus on people because people will also serve the mission. The focused mindset, what does this look like? It's moved by internal command, internal standards of success. So instead of looking to others for what to do and looking at the competition and looking at the social constructs and the economies and the markets and the demands, it's saying, well, what do we want to put in the world? What do we want? What demand do we want to create? And it's stepping up and saying, okay, I'm leading the ship. I am leading this market. And I'm creating demand. I'm creating the market for it. And that again goes right to leading. A principle of legacy brand is leading. And so it sets new precedent and influences demand, like we just talked about. It also anticipates, which is planning and preparing for expansion at stage one. It prioritizes possibilities, which allows space for change of structures and methods. So again, once you know the possibilities, you can do anything, anywhere, at any time. And this is the power of legacy. So a perfect example is if you've heard of the Mongolian army, do you know why the Mongols were so powerful? They conquered many civilizations. In fact, our Western civilization would not be here today if the Mongolian army didn't come. If you have not read the book Genghis Khan, I highly recommend it. It's all about Genghis Khan's conquering, and it was really fascinating. I learned that their army had an engineers, and so they never carried equipment or tanks or like tanks of that period. What they did is they would create those things on the fly wherever they were. And engineers were so powerful because they would use the knowledge of what was available to them. And that made them very, very powerful, because instead of lugging around machinery and heavy equipment and that making them slower and needing more men to carry these things, they were able to move very fast. They were able to be very sly and hide better and do surprise attacks, because they were always building on the go and using things only when they needed it. So that is exactly what a legacy brand leader does, and why principles are so important. So legacy brand framework, now we just went over it. It's the mission. Protects vision and mission above all. Principle based and people focused. It's moved by internal command, internal standards of success. It sets new precedent and influences demand. It plans and prepares for expansion at stage 1. It allows space for change of structures and methods. Branding is a framework. Marketing, essentially what you're going to see is all of the business operations are frameworks of legacy brands, because guess what? Every single thing in your business, you're building as a principle first. You're learning the principles of these. That's the framework of a legacy brand. Learning the principles of these things, so that just like the Mongolians, if the market changes, if the economy changes, if the demand changes, you're able to adapt because you know how things work. You're not limiting your scope to one method or to a how. That's why it's so important to learn the what and why first. That is a principle. So learning these principles is how legacy brands thrive, because adaptation is survival. Right? If we can adapt to anything, we can survive anything. And it's the same with a legacy brand. So that's that. What have you been learning before principles? If you're looking at the how first, you're thinking short term. Principles are needed. So I invite you to get on a call, learn the basics about the principles of your legacy. Let's talk about the passion, the service, the vision, so that we can set a foundation for positioning your business as a legacy.